Stay informed, stay ahead. Subscribe now to USA Fresh News.
Today in USA Fresh News. Good morning, America. The nation is in shock after the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, who was fatally shot during a campus event in Utah. The FBI has released images of a suspect described as college age and is offering a $100,000 reward for information leading to an arrest. Across Washington, leaders from both parties have condemned the attack as an assault on free speech, even as debates intensify over security, rhetoric, and gun policy. Meanwhile, markets ride the tension of record highs shadowed by fragile labor data. Immigration raids stir controversy in Chicago, and climate extremes disrupt daily life from coast to coast.
So let's see, or listen. America begins this day with a profound sense of unease, shaken by the shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old conservative activist and founder of Turning Point USA. He was gunned down in front of students at Utah Valley University, transforming what was meant to be a spirited debate into a moment of chaos and tragedy. Authorities confirmed his death within hours, and the FBI wasted no time in treating the case as a matter of national urgency. On Monday night, the Bureau announced a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of the gunman, who remains at large. Surveillance images released to the public depict a young man described as college age, blending into the crowd. Investigators have urged caution against speculation, but the release of a bounty that high is a stark message. This is not just a campus tragedy, it is a crime with profound national implications. The assassination has thrown American politics into rare bipartisan alignment, at least in the immediate aftermath. Republican lawmakers described it as an attack not only on Kirk, but on the very principles of free expression and political engagement. Prominent Democrats, too, spoke with grief and outrage, stressing that no matter how sharp divisions become, violence cannot be tolerated as a political tool. For a nation fatigued by cynicism, it was a brief but striking moment of unity. Yet that unity feels fragile, already fraying on the edges as partisan groups spin narratives online, framing the killing as either martyrdom or as an inevitable byproduct of toxic political culture. Charlie Kirk's career, though short, had been highly visible. From launching Turning Point USA in 2012 at the age of 18 to building it into a multi-million-dollar conservative organization, he became one of the youngest and most influential activists in the country. His message, calling out perceived liberal bias on college campuses, creating viral content, and energizing conservative youth, made him a celebrity on the right. He embraced combative debates, sometimes provoking strong protests, but always insisting that confrontation was the price of cultural influence. For supporters, he was a mentor and a symbol of unapologetic conviction. For critics, he embodied the polarization of campus life. His assassination forces both groups to grapple with a new reality, that the fight over ideas has crossed a deadly line. The FBI's announcement of a $100,000 reward is more than an investigative tool. It is a symbol of how seriously the government views the case. Such rewards are typically reserved for fugitives considered highly dangerous or cases with national impact. For many Americans, the sum is not just a figure. It is an emblem of how fragile the environment has become. Universities nationwide are already reviewing their security protocols, fearing that lecture halls, once sanctuaries of debate, may no longer be safe. Parents sending their children back to campuses this fall are now asking uncomfortable questions about safety at events where politics intersect with education. The echoes of history hang heavy. The assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in 1968 and the shooting of George Wallace in 1972 remain etched into the memory of older generations. For younger Americans, who grew up believing political assassinations were relics of a darker past, this moment is sobering. It reminds the country that violence has never been entirely absent from its political life, and that the fragility of democracy is always tested when words give way to bullets. Beyond the tragedy of Kirk's death, other headlines continue to shape the national mood. On Wall Street, markets are riding a wave of exuberance. The S&P 500, Dow Jones, and Nasdaq all closed at record highs, fueled by speculation that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates at its upcoming meeting. For investors, the promise of lower borrowing costs has driven optimism. But beneath the numbers lies unease. Revised payroll data, expected later this week, could show that job growth was overstated by nearly 1 million positions. If confirmed, such a revelation could rattle markets and expose the fragility beneath the surface of the rally. For ordinary Americans, these economic shifts are not abstract. They directly impact mortgage rates, car loans, and the availability of small business financing. The optimism of Wall Street may prove fleeting if Main Street struggles to keep pace. Meanwhile, in Chicago, immigration enforcement surged back into the headlines. ICE announced Operation Midway Blitz, a series of raids that led to dozens of arrests. The operation, carried out in immigrant-heavy neighborhoods, has divided the city. Supporters argue that strict enforcement is necessary to uphold the rule of law and deter criminal networks. Critics counter that such raids shatter trust, leaving communities fearful and less willing to cooperate with local law enforcement. The economic dimension is also unavoidable. Industries like agriculture, hospitality, and construction, already strained by labor shortages, warn that crackdowns only deepen their challenges. What happens in Chicago today reflects a national debate that shows no sign of resolution: how to balance security with compassion in immigration policy. And then, there is Washington, where scandal continues to feed the public's appetite for intrigue. Lawmakers reignited the Jeffrey Epstein saga by releasing a handwritten note allegedly signed by former President Donald Trump in Epstein's so-called birthday book. While the legal weight of this evidence remains unclear, its symbolic impact is undeniable. For critics, it is another reminder of elite impunity. For Trump's defenders, it is proof of an endless witch hunt. Either way, the story stirs public distrust at a time when confidence in institutions is already at historic lows. Every revelation, regardless of its concrete implications, becomes another thread in the tapestry of cynicism that defines modern American politics. National security, too, commands attention. Over the weekend, the U.S. Navy intercepted and destroyed a vessel in the southern Caribbean, allegedly linked to Venezuela's Tren de Aragua cartel. Several suspects were killed in the operation, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth described the mission as not training, a phrase meant to emphasize its seriousness. Venezuela has condemned the strike as a violation of its sovereignty, while Washington insists it was necessary to combat organized crime and secure maritime trade. The incident highlights a reality Americans often forget. Battles over security and organized crime are not distant. They directly influence the safety of U.S. communities through narcotics trafficking and human smuggling. And finally, the environment continues to impose itself on every conversation. California is in the grip of a marine heat wave, with sea surface temperatures up to 7 degrees above normal. The phenomenon is threatening fisheries, fueling harmful algal blooms, and destabilizing coastal ecosystems. Globally, northern China is experiencing both its longest rainy season since 1961 and its hottest summer on record. These events, while happening thousands of miles apart, ripple into American life through food prices, supply chains, and trade routes. Climate change is no longer tomorrow's problem. It is today's reality. Together, these stories paint a portrait of a nation under pressure. A young activist's assassination has revived fears of political violence. Markets boom, but the foundations feel shaky. Immigration enforcement sparks both applause and anguish. Scandals deepen mistrust, military operations abroad raise diplomatic stakes, and climate extremes threaten livelihoods. For everyday Americans, these are not abstract narratives. They are felt in mortgages, jobs, groceries, and community safety. The central question lingers: can America adapt quickly enough to withstand the shocks before they multiply into crises? The reverberations of Charlie Kirk's assassination dominate today's headlines, yet beneath that seismic event lies a series of quieter but equally consequential stories shaping America's future. If Kirk's killing revealed the fragility of public life, these other narratives show the hidden strains testing the foundations of the nation's economy, diplomacy, and culture. Energy stands at the center of those strains. Across the United States, utilities are reporting record-breaking demand. Two forces are colliding: the relentless rise of artificial intelligence and data centers, and the mounting pressure of hotter summers driven by climate change. Data centers alone now consume staggering amounts of electricity, sometimes enough to power small cities. Virginia's data center alley has become a symbol of this trend, with entire communities reshaped by server farms that draw as much energy as industrial plants. Meanwhile, households in Texas, Arizona, and Florida rely more heavily than ever on air conditioning, a necessity that has become a lifeline but also a burden. This combination is pushing America's aging power grid to its limits. Rolling brownouts, surging utility bills, and calls for infrastructure modernization are becoming everyday concerns. Policymakers now face the daunting question: can the grid be transformed quickly enough to meet the demands of a digitized, warming world? History offers lessons, but also warnings. In the 1930s, America responded to energy scarcity with massive electrification drives, bringing power to rural communities. In the 1970s, nuclear projects emerged as symbols of national ambition. Today's equivalent would be sweeping investment in renewables, battery storage, and grid intelligence. But political will is fractured. While some states aggressively pursue green transitions, others remain tied to fossil fuels. The risk is not just technical but strategic. If the grid falters, America's competitiveness in the global economy could be compromised. Trade is another arena where the ground is shifting. The Supreme Court is preparing to rule on whether the Trump administration exceeded executive authority in imposing tariffs justified under reciprocity arguments. Billions of dollars in duties could hang in the balance, with companies pressing for refunds and industries bracing for change. For decades, presidents have enjoyed sweeping latitude over trade policy, often invoking national security to justify tariffs. A judicial reversal would redraw the balance of power, curbing the executive branch and restoring congressional oversight. For businesses, this is not an abstract constitutional fight. It directly affects supply chains, pricing strategies, and hiring decisions. For households, the consequences manifest in everyday costs. Cars, appliances, electronics, and even groceries reflect the hidden toll of tariffs. A courtroom decision in Washington could reshape shopping receipts nationwide. The corporate world, too, is at a crossroads. Intel, once the unrivaled titan of semiconductors, is battling leadership turmoil. The resignation of its chief product officer has intensified doubts about the company's ability to compete with rivals like NVIDIA and Taiwan's TSMC. Semiconductors are no longer mere components. They are the backbone of the digital age, powering everything from smartphones to defense systems. Washington has poured billions into the CHIPS Act to strengthen domestic manufacturing, framing the industry as a matter of national security. Yet if Intel falters, America risks remaining tethered to overseas supply chains in geopolitically sensitive regions. The stakes extend beyond shareholders. Workers in California, consumers across the country, and policymakers in the Pentagon all depend on a stable semiconductor base. Intel's challenges are not just corporate, they are national. Internationally, sanctions continue to define America's strategic toolkit. In Europe, allies are working to tighten coordination on measures against Russia as the war in Ukraine grinds on. Sanctions are wars of attrition. They rarely deliver swift victories, but erode adversaries over time. The problem lies in enforcement. Russia has proven adept at exploiting loopholes, channeling goods through Asia and the Middle East. For sanctions to truly bite, consistency must be ironclad. For Americans, the impact may feel distant, but it arrives subtly, through rising gas prices, fluctuating shipping costs, and higher food bills. What begins as a geopolitical maneuver ends at the checkout counter. Closer to home, the U.S. military's presence in the Caribbean is expanding. The recent naval strike against a vessel linked to Venezuela's Tren de Aragua cartel was described by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as not training, emphasizing its real-world stakes. For Venezuela, the strike was a violation of sovereignty. For Washington, it was an imperative act to prevent transnational crime from spilling into American neighborhoods. The blurred line between law enforcement and geopolitics is clear. Drug trafficking and human smuggling abroad feed directly into crises at home. For families battling addiction or communities disrupted by crime, the link is unmistakable. Culture is playing its role in shaping these debates, too. Once confined to engineers and regulators, energy consumption has entered the mainstream conversation. Podcasts, influencers, and media outlets frame it as a moral choice. Is binge streaming, training AI models, or attending energy-intensive events socially responsible? These cultural conversations often precede political ones. Recycling, once fringe, became mainstream through cultural adoption before laws followed. Hybrid cars moved from curiosity to status symbols before tax credits made them ubiquitous. If energy consumption becomes a cultural flashpoint, corporations may shift behavior more quickly than Congress passes laws. That shift could reshape demand patterns in ways both unpredictable and profound. Taken together, these threads reveal a nation in constant adaptation. Energy systems strain under demand. Trade rules face judicial scrutiny. Corporate giants stumble under pressure. Sanctions test unity across oceans. Military operations blur sovereignty and defense. Cultural shifts reframe technical issues as moral imperatives. Each challenge, taken alone, seems daunting. Taken together, they sketch a portrait of a country juggling fragile balances while navigating uncertain waters. For ordinary Americans, these macro-level challenges translate into tangible realities. Rising electric bills reflect data centers hundreds of miles away. Car prices reflect courtroom debates in Washington. Job stability depends on corporate execution in Silicon Valley. Heating bills fluctuate with European sanction policies. Community safety in U.S. neighborhoods is tied to naval operations in the Caribbean. What feels distant or abstract often arrives at the kitchen table in the form of costs, opportunities, or anxieties. And therein lies the larger lesson. Today's secondary stories often become tomorrow's breaking news. Energy strain can spark blackouts. Tariff disputes can evolve into economic crises. Corporate missteps can weaken national competitiveness. Sanctions can redraw alliances. Cultural debates can become law. America has proven resilient in the past, but resilience is not immunity. It requires foresight, coordination, and the will to act before cracks widen into crises. The assassination of Charlie Kirk has dominated the headlines, casting a shadow across the political landscape. Yet the quieter narratives of energy, trade, corporate stability, sanctions, military operations, and cultural debates may prove just as decisive in shaping the nation's future. Together, they reveal a United States tested on multiple fronts, its resilience stretched, its adaptability questioned, and its destiny still unwritten.
Sports. This week in American sports, competition once again proved to be a mirror of resilience, surprise, and shifting fortunes. From the NFL's global showcase in Brazil to baseball's tightening playoff races and bold decisions in college football, fans across the country were reminded why games capture attention far beyond their scoreboards. The NFL grabbed headlines with its international opener in São Paulo, where the Los Angeles Chargers stunned the reigning Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs in a 27-21 upset. JustinHerbert.com and Precise threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, dismantling a Chiefs defense that had been dominant in recent years. Patrick Mahomes, usually unstoppable, struggled to find rhythm until a late rally fell short. For the Chargers, long dismissed as inconsistent underachievers, the victory was more than an upset, was a statement of legitimacy on a global stage. Economically, the game also reinforced the NFL's expanding reach. A packed Brazilian stadium showed that football's appeal is not confined to American soil. And the league's strategy of exporting marquee matchups abroad is clearly bearing fruit. Back home, the Pittsburgh Steelers delivered one of the most thrilling finishes of the week in a 34-32 victory over the New York Jets. Yet the excitement was quickly tempered by injury news. Safety Deshaun Elliott sprained his MCL, leaving the defense with a hole. In a swift move, the Steelers signed veteran Jabril Peppers to reinforce the secondary, signaling their determination to stay competitive. For Pittsburgh fans, the front office's decisiveness was a reminder that championships are won not just on the field but in the ability to adapt off it. Elsewhere, the Green Bay Packers worked to patch their own depth issues, adding running back Pierre Strong Jr. to their practice squad. Injuries have plagued their backfield, and the move is designed to stabilize a struggling rushing attack. Meanwhile, the New York Giants faced a setback when linebacker Micah McFadden went down with a foot injury, weakening a defense already under heavy pressure in the NFC East. These personnel shifts underscored the constant chess match of the NFL, where fortunes can turn on a single play or roster move. Major League Baseball is entering its most gripping stretch. The Texas Rangers, desperate to stay in the postseason race, defeated the Milwaukee Brewers 5-0 in a game defined by breakout performances. Michael Hellman blasted a grand slam and added an RBI double, while pitcher Jacob Latz threw 6 shutout innings to silence Milwaukee's bats. The win electrified Rangers fans in Arlington and kept their October hopes alive. Meanwhile, the Chicago Cubs, with an 81-63 record, tightened their grip on a postseason berth, while old rivals the Yankees and Red Sox continued to battle fiercely for wildcard survival in the American League. September baseball has always been about drama, and this year is no exception. Even in the minors, playoff energy is in the air. The Scranton, Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders, the Yankees' AAA affiliate, are on the verge of clinching their league's second-half title. Their success highlights the importance of development systems that feed depth into big league rosters. For franchises dreaming of October, a strong farm system can be the hidden edge. College football added another dramatic twist. Colorado head coach Deion Sanders made waves by elevating third-string quarterback Ryan Staub to starter after his standout performance in a 31-7 win over Delaware. Staub threw 2 touchdowns with composure, impressing teammates and fans alike. Sanders' decision to prioritize results over reputation sent a message of bold leadership, and it energized the Colorado faithful, who see in Staub the possibility of a new chapter for their program. What ties these storylines together is the sense of resilience and surprise. From Herbert's brilliance in Brazil to Hellman's heroics in Texas, from Pepper's arrival in Pittsburgh to Staub's leap in Colorado, athletes and organizations alike showed the ability to adapt, inspire, and overcome adversity. Beyond the field, the economic stakes are vast. Television contracts, merchandise sales, ticket revenue, and local business surges tied to playoff games or marquee matchups. Culturally, the debate stirred in bars, workplaces, and online forums reveal why sports remain one of America's few common languages in a divided era. At their best, sports capture the unpredictability of American life itself. No dynasty is safe, no underdog is without hope, and every contest can flip expectations upside down. This week proved it again.
Weather. Weather across the United States this week is a portrait of contrasts. A reminder that while the skies above differ by region, they are all threaded together by the growing weight of climate extremes. From the burning heat of the west to unsettled storms in the southeast, from crisp autumn transitions in the Midwest and Northeast to the unusual marine heat wave off the Pacific coast, the nation finds itself navigating a patchwork of challenges with consequences that reach far beyond daily forecasts. In the west, the relentless grip of heat refuses to loosen. California, Nevada, and Arizona are enduring temperatures that climb well above seasonal averages. Soil moisture is at record lows, turning landscapes brittle and primed for fire, even before the traditional wildfire season reaches its peak. Officials warn that shifting winds could spark sudden flare-ups, forcing communities into evacuation mode with little notice. For families, the implications are immediate. Decisions about whether children can play outdoors, whether to invest in costly air filtration systems, and how to prepare for the possibility of smoke-choked days. For farmers, the risks compound. Wildfires can wipe out crops, scorch infrastructure, and destabilize already tight production costs. Agricultural laborers, too, face mounting heat stress, raising concerns for health and safety across fields and vineyards. The Midwest and Northeast, in contrast, are slipping gracefully into autumn. Cooler nights and crisp mornings are becoming part of the daily rhythm. Farmers welcome the conditions as ideal for harvesting corn and soybeans, with fields drier and machinery running smoothly. City residents, meanwhile, are embracing the seasonal shift, crowding into parks and enjoying relief from the oppressive humidity of summer. But even here, challenges lurk. Rapid swings in temperature have led public health officials to issue reminders that sudden cold snaps can exacerbate respiratory issues among vulnerable populations. Energy companies are also bracing for the delicate balance of transitioning from high summer cooling demand to rising heating needs. The result is a ripple effect that hits millions of households directly in the form of fluctuating utility bills, a reminder that even pleasant weather carries hidden economic weight. In the Southeast, vigilance remains the theme. Scattered thunderstorms dominate forecasts, fueled by lingering tropical moisture. September, after all, is historically the peak of Atlantic hurricane season. And while no major hurricanes currently loom on the horizon, meteorologists are quick to remind coastal residents that tropical depressions can transform into destructive storms with startling speed. From Florida to the Carolinas, towns remain on guard, memories of past seasons never far from mind. Even moderate flooding from heavy rains has the power to disrupt commerce, strain infrastructure, and shutter small businesses that depend heavily on seasonal visitors. For many communities, each weather forecast doubles as an economic forecast, influencing everything from tourist bookings to insurance premiums. Meanwhile, the Pacific Coast is wrestling with an anomaly that scientists say is both troubling and instructive. A marine heat wave has pushed sea surface temperatures up to 7 degrees above average. The warmer waters have fueled harmful algal blooms, disrupted fish migration patterns, and put strain on marine ecosystems. For coastal businesses and fisheries, the impact is immediate: reduced catches, rising costs, and growing uncertainty. The anomaly also influences weather onshore, producing muggy nights and unstable air currents. To fishermen and local communities, these are not abstract data points. They are existential challenges, changing livelihoods in real time. Taken together, these regional conditions tell a larger national story. Weather is no longer background noise. It is a driver of economic decisions, health precautions, and lifestyle choices. A vineyard in California calculating the risk of heat and smoke, a family in Boston budgeting for utility bills, a fisherman in Oregon confronting disrupted waters, a hotel in Miami bracing for flood damage. All are living the reality of a climate in flux. The broader message is clear. Climate extremes are not a distant possibility. They are today's reality. For policymakers, that means urgent decisions about infrastructure, energy resilience, and disaster preparedness. For businesses, it means hedging risks and reshaping operations. For households, it means factoring weather into choices about health, work, and even finances. The skies this week tell a story of contrasts, but also a common thread: pressure on ecosystems, on economies, and on people. America's weather is not only shaping this week, it is quietly shaping the nation's future.